that it's apparent?
In order to, make a regularity real, you're able to test it. You're able to observe it.
You're not understanding. Okay, testing would presuppose the regularity of nature. You can't
How
test the regularity of nature. You can
why
test
wouldn't I be able to
instances
test it? Okay.
because testing presupposes that there are regularities in the world that are real to begin with. Otherwise, testing would be meaningless. So
Wouldn't you be testing
I'm
between
asking you.
regulars
Listen,
and
you see what you're
irregularities?
listen. What you're confusing is empirical endeavors in attempting to uncover specific regularities. But the question is, are those regularities are they instituted and secured by something that they continue, or is the apparent regularity just simply spontaneous happenstance? So, for example, if I roll the dice 3 times in a row, do the 3 sevens necessitate that the dice are weighted to come up seven, or was it happenstance that they came up seven?
I'd say it was happenstance.
Okay, now if you see any number of similarities consecutively or chronologically, how many similarities have to occur in a row in any time span that the similarity is necessitated as opposed to its happenstance?
Um, what, more than 50%, I guess?
Is that your
More than half
assertion?
the time? More than half the time. That's why we have the, most of the time.
More than half the time.
In order to make it something a commonality, to make the assertion that this is a
Yeah, I don't think you're
regularity,
really under. I don't
you
think
have
you're
to be more than
understanding.
50%.
Where'd you get that from?
That's just science.
Dude, you're talking to a 6-year-old man. I was studying science before your dad even had a sparkle in his eye when he met your mother. Okay?
Okay. So then
Show
what
me,
would
show me, show me, show me where science says if there's a regularity 50% of the time, but 50% of the time it's not regular, that therefore the continuity is dictated by something. Where
I
does
think
science
you're
say that?
I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying.
Oh, no, no. Quite the reverse is true. You're not understanding. What dictates that the uniformity or the regularity of nature is real? In order to say that it's real, something must be imposing and sustaining it. Otherwise, it's indistinguishable from spontaneous occurrence. Are you using probabilistic reasoning?
Probability, then yeah.
That
Yeah.
an extreme series of similarities, same event, same event, same event, same event, that at a certain point you're reasoning that it would be so improbable for chance or happenstance to produce the chronology of continuity. Therefore, there is something that necessitates that. Is that your reasoning?
You said what was that, the tail end of that?
Yeah. Are you reasoning probabilistically that any series of consistencies over a time period must be considered the product of necessity versus chance due to the improbability of chance producing the consistency?
I guess so. I think if
Okay,
you're explaining it correctly.
guess what? That conclusion is not logically necessitated
And why would that be the case?
because probabilistic probabilities don't necessitate. Okay,
They okay, when you say don't necessitate, what are you exactly are you meaning? Are you using
right?
the same
Okay,
dice say are you using the same dice
can
expression
I
as in
listen? Okay, let me try to explain it to you. Um, is it impossible for me to roll sevens twice in a row?
is it impossible? No.
Okay, how about 3 times?
No.
How about 10 times?
Okay, wait, yeah, you're gonna go and say, of course
No,
it's
no, no.
not
Listen,
impossible.
listen, listen. Don't interrupt me. Okay. Is it impossible? And I want you to answer the question, not something semi-related. Is it impossible for me to roll 10 times in a row?
Not impossible.
Okay. How about 20 times?
Not impossible. Possible,
100 times,
but not impossible.
1,000
You're
times.
gonna keep going up, but it's not impossible.
Okay, 1,000,000 times.
It's not impossible.
Good. Therefore, when you use probability, you can't logically necessitate that necessity is behind the continuity as opposed to happenstance. All you can just simply say is, I choose to believe in necessity due to the improbability.
But I was never arguing about a probability of something happening.
Okay, do you believe that the continuity of existence is by necessity, or is it just spontaneous happenstance?
I think it's spontaneous happenstance.
Okay, good. Then you can't appeal that past consistencies will continue into the future, or generalize it. That's how things are. All you can just simply say is there are past similarities.
You can use those past similarities to then come to a conclusion of a percentage of something happening.
No, that's false.
That's the whole point of
That's
probability.
begging the question. Okay, you
How would
see,
that
because inductive reasoning only works is if you first presuppose the regularity of nature. Okay, you can't use inductive reasoning to establish the regularity of nature. If you already presuppose the regularity of nature and then you use inductive reasoning, then you can make probabilistic declarations because you've already established that some things are static while other things are dynamic. Is there
how would
anything
you
that,
Okay, go
listen,
ahead.
is there anything, okay, do you understand the difference between static and dynamic? Static is what does not change, dynamic is what does change. So when we make probabilistic evaluations, we only do so based upon the background information of what's static along with what is dynamic. What is it that is necessarily static, sir?
Um, let's see. That's more of like a metaphysical kind of thing. Usually, so I don't think that.
Is there anything that is static in the past, into the present, and into the future?
I don't think so.
Okay, good. Then you lose your ability to invoke the uniformity of nature. And if you assert something that implicitly presupposes a uniformity of nature, you're contradicting yourself. So when you were talking about the behavior of lions, you were implicitly invoking the regularities of nature as per lion behavior. Okay. Will the future be like the past?
Uh,
Not
when
identical.
you
Will the
say okay,
future be? Okay.
like the
Yeah.
past, possibly.
Yeah. Okay. If you drop something right now, will it go to the ground?
Uh, probably,
Is that what you think?
probably.
Do you
There's
think there's a
any
possibility? Do you think it's a possibility that if you let go of something right now, that it's going to float in the air?
Oh, okay. Now you're getting like anti gravity. You said fall on the ground. There's any variables that can stop it from hitting the ground?
Could you go back 2 sentences? My headset went out.
What happened?
Could you go back 2 sentences? My headset went out.
Okay. When you said when it hits the ground, the way I interpreted that was touching the floor. But there could be any
Okay,
number
let
of
me ask you a
variables.
question. Let me ask you a question. Right? If I offer to give you $1 million, right? I will give you $1 million if I let go of the ball and it floats. But if it doesn't float, you have to give me $50. You gonna take
Okay.
that bet? You gonna take that bet?
Uh, not really.
Okay. So your
I wouldn't take
$50
I wouldn't take
right.
that bet because I don't know the
Okay. So the
any
point is okay.
variables.
So the point is this. Okay. Do you believe in a world that is at its ground matter, energy, causality, and the regularity of nature, which then results in chemistry, physics, things like that? Okay.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So is the causal principle that there's a cause and effect between events, is that real?
I'm sorry, what was that? My mic cut off.
Is the causal principle that there's a cause and effect between events real?
I think so, yeah.
Good. And what makes it real?
Um, the only things that we can use to make it real are our five senses.
No, no, no. Your senses do not causally dictate the causal principle because then you would be God. Okay? But you don't believe in God. Now, I didn't ask you how you apprehend that causality is true. I want to know what imposes and sustains the principle of causality. Is there something that imposes it and sustains that?
Um, imposes and sustains that
Yeah,
cause and effect.
let me rephrase the question. Do you believe that God, as the eternal creator of the world, where everything that exists that is not God derives and depends upon God, do you believe that the causal principle derives and depends upon God?
No.
Okay. Could you tell me what imposes and secures the realness of the causal principle?
Um, that's a that's like a metaphysical question, so it's not like
Do you have
like
sir,
go ahead.
everything we talk about is metaphysical in nature. There isn't anything that is not metaphysical in nature. If I talk about scratching my nose, that's within the context of metaphysics. Okay? Now, since you don't believe that God is what makes the causal principle real, and you believe the causal principle is real, what makes it real?
Let's see. Like I said, I mean, you say you answered that if I answer this, it would say that it would make the proclamation that I'm God,
What
but I
may
don't think that's
what
the case.
okay, do you have something that is identifiable and defensible that institutes and secures the causal principle?
Uh, that's just a repeat of my answer to the previous question, the five senses. We can only determine whether it's real
Okay,
based off what we.
obviously you didn't understand the question, okay? Your response is that you use your five senses to, in some way and in some sense, apprehend causality. But your senses presupposes the actuality. Your senses do not impose and sustain the causal principle. Okay? Yeah. Are we clear on that?
Sure.
Okay. So in the world around us, you believe in the causal principle, that there's a cause and effect between event.
Okay.
Or you're going to believe one of two other things. One, that all events are spontaneous and are unconnected and unrelated to other events, or you'll believe that there's a mixture of the two. Okay? So you believe in the causal principle. Good. What institutes and secures its actuality, its realness? Since it's not God, what is it?
It's the same answer. I'm gonna give you the same answer.
Well,
You can't
why would you
affirm something
listen,
is
listen,
real
hey,
or not.
listen to me. Why would you repeat the answer three times when I've already given you a rebuttal to it when you did not offer a counter rebuttal?
Because the question is a loaded question.
Okay, what is a loaded question?
You're trying to formulate and move me to a
Okay,
specific answer.
Kodo. When people get cornered by their own beliefs, okay, and they get uncomfortable with a question that they either don't know how to answer or don't want to answer, they respond by saying, well, that's a loaded question. Well, let's see if my question is loaded, okay? I want you to explain to me in one sentence what is a loaded question.
A loaded question is a question where you're trying to get the individual who's trying to answer said question to answer in a specific manner that is advantageous to your argument.
That is false. That is not what a loaded question is. Okay. Do you understand that if I did do that, there's not a problem to that? Because as long as the question is legitimate, if I ask you a question and I expect you to answer it, and either way you answer it, it's an advantage to me in the discussion, that's not a problem. That's a problem for you, but there's nothing unethical or irrational about it. A loaded question is a question that contains either an explicit or implicit premise that is objectionable. Have you stopped beating your wife? Okay,
Right.
that's a loaded question
Okay.
because it presupposes that you acknowledge that you were a wife beater. Now, suppose you told me that you had gotten into fisticuffs with your wife, right? And you beat her up a couple of times. And I came to you and I said, have you stopped beating your wife? Would that be a loaded question?
No, I can see. Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
Okay,
Yeah.
so a loaded question contains a premise, explicit or implicit, that would otherwise be objectionable. And the premise is objectionable, not that the question is objectionable. So I didn't ask you a loaded question. I asked you what institutes the causal principle. What is the implicit premise that's objectionable to you?
Okay. So the implicit premise that's objectionable to me is that um you're trying to say that you're trying to affirm the cause and effect, what is real and how we determine if it's real or not. And
You
I
haven't
answered.
identified. You haven't. No, no. You did not identify what the objectionable premise is. When you just responded, there was no identification of a premise that was objectionable. What is the premise that's objectionable? If I said to you, what makes the causal principle real? Okay.
And I
In that
answered.
question, what is the premise inherent in that is objectionable?
You're the real aspect of it. When you say what makes it real,
Yeah.
that's what I'm objecting to.
Is the causal principle an illusion?
The causal principle only subsumes that human
Yeah,
aspect, the human variable.
dude. Can you be honest here right now? Can you be transparently honest, or are you going to try to play to the room, which no one in the room is going to be fooled right now by your rhetoric? Okay, listen carefully. If I ask you what makes the causal principle real, okay,
And I answered
no, the
humanity
answer.
and their five senses.
Okay, okay. Are you a teenager?
No,
Okay. So are you saying that humanities are gods and humanity institutes and secures causality? That when the sun emits photons, that human beings are gods making photons come out of the sun?
no.
Then your answer is wrong. You're talking about human beings either intuiting or using some rationale as to why causality is real. So humans don't institute and secure the actuality of causality, but we might agree for the sake of discussion that they might in some way apprehend that causality is real. I'm not asking you do we apprehend it? I'm saying what makes it real as opposed to it's an illusion. If I said to you we're walking in a desert and I say, "Wow, there's water over there. Look at that water right there." And I said, let's go. And you say, no, that's not water. That's a mirage. Okay. And I said, no, I can see it. It's water. You said, no, it's not real.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
Okay.
your position in your not God world is that the causal principle is real and that God did not institute and sustain the causal principle as creator. So I want to know what is it that institutes the causal principle? Either the causal principle is instituted and secured by something that is not itself, or you're going to have to claim that the causal principle is self contained and eternal without a beginning. Which is it?
Okay. Can you explain what you mean by self-contained without a beginning?
Yeah, either a state of affairs is unconditionally non-dependent or not. And if it's not, it will depend or derive upon something. So the causal principle that you believe is global or universal either derives and depends upon something that is not itself, or the causal principle is eternal and self-contained and unconditionally non-dependent, non-derivative. So is the causal principle derivative or not derivative?
It's if I'm understanding your question correctly, then it isn't derivative. It's not derivative of God.
Okay, I understand. You've already explained that you reject that. Is the causal principle derivative or not derivative? Is it dependent or not dependent?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Is it derivative or not derivative?
Is the causal principle dependent or not dependent? Derivative or not derivative?
Well, but dependent on what? Is it just
Okay.
dependent?
Is the causal principle eternal without beginning?
It is determined. It has to have something to begin with.
Okay. So then the causal principle cannot explain itself. So what is it that institutes and secures the causal principle?
Wait, why wouldn't cause and effect be able to explain itself?
Because you just denied it.
When I say cause
Yeah,
and effect needs
dude,
to define
listen to
itself.
me. In all sincerity, okay, I'm really not trying to be a jerk. You're really not focusing on what I'm saying to you. You got to focus, okay? Now, if I say something you don't understand, you can stop me at any time and say, I don't understand. Can you please explain it? Okay. Now, either something is dependent or it's not dependent. If it's not dependent in any way, shape, or form, then it will be self contained. It'll be absolute within itself. It will not be
Mm.
contingent. It will be eternal.
Oh, okay. I see what you're going. Okay, but when you're using eternal, are you trying to reference God as that part of the eternal?
No, no. I am saying that something, and I'm not identifying any something. I'm just saying something is
Mm.
eternal if it does not begin, if it exists and it does not begin to exist. Okay. Now, is the causal principle, did it begin to exist or has it always existed?
Ah, okay. Now I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's always existed. Cause and effect has always existed.
Okay. Now that's incoherent. When you want to know why?
And why would that be?
Okay. Because if cause and effect is eternal, then you would have an infinite regress of causal succession. Okay. Do you understand that before I
Causal
finish?
succession. Go ahead.
Do you
Like cause and
understand
effect.
that?
The succession of cause and effect.
Yeah. If the causal principle is eternal, then you would have an infinite regress of causal succession. Do you understand?
Okay, I kind of understand what you're saying.
Okay. Now, there's at least two problems with that. One, you cannot traverse an infinity. Okay. That's not coherent. Number two, if everything has a cause, there's an infinite causal succession, and everything has a cause.
Hmm.
If something is an effect of a cause, then the effect is of a second order as opposed to being of a primary order. Okay? So if there's an infinite regress of cause and effect, then everything is of a second order, but then nothing would be primary. So
Um.
everything would be of a second order, nothing would be primary. But if there's nothing that's primary, there can't be second order events. So an infinite regress is incoherent.
I think I would have to object with that second part.
You
What's the
can't. You
significance of primary and secondary?
listen to me. Okay. Something is secondary is if it begins to exist.
If it
Okay?
begins to exist because of a primary cause.
That's right. Unless
Okay.
of course you want to accept the notion that anything begins to exist without a cause. But you see you don't believe that. You've already told us. So
Mhm.
if everything has a cause, then everything is of a second order. But if everything is of a second order, nothing can be primary.
I don't think that could make sense because if everything is of second cause.
Listen to me. Listen to me. Listen to me. I'm not trying to be mean here. You don't know what you're talking about.
You
Okay?
just made the
Something,
argument that
listen to me
if
carefully.
something or
Something,
alright,
listen carefully. Listen carefully. If anything is within the sequence of cause and effect, okay? Whatever does not have a cause, or I should say, whatever has a cause is of a second order. Do you understand that?
okay.
Right? Now, if something does not have a cause, but that whatever that is results in something else, then that thing is primary, resulting in a second order state.
Okay.
Now, if everything is of a second order, then nothing can be primary.
Who's
Okay?
making the assertion that everything is secondary?
You did.
No. I never
Yes.
made the assertion that everything
Okay,
is
dude,
secondary.
listen to me. Listen. You seem like a nice guy, right? But I have to tell you, you're ill-informed. You
You're
said you told me there's an infinite regress of cause and effect. Okay? If there's an infinite regress of cause and effect, that means every event has a cause. So an event is of a second order, unless you want to believe that some events spontaneously come into existence without an antecedent. Do you know what an antecedent is?
No.
It means something that comes before something else.
Okay.
Your
So
mother and
then go
father,
ahead.
your mother and father are antecedents to you,
Okay.
right? Now, um, if there's an infinite regress, there's no ultimate antecedent. So nothing would be primary. Everything would be of a second order. But if everything is of a second order, then nothing can be primary. This is not complicated logic. It's
It
a
seems a little bit odd because then you're making the assertion that there's nothing that could come after a second order or
you're
nothing
not you're not
can
understood,
connect to a
dude.
second
Listen,
order.
listen to me. I'm not using trick logic here. Okay? If something is primary, okay, it doesn't have an antecedent. Because if it did, it wouldn't be primary, it would be secondary. Okay? If something does not have an antecedent, then it's of a primary state. Primary meaning first.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, we've established this.
Right, right. Now, so something that's primary cannot have an antecedent. Okay? If something has an antecedent to it, then it can't be primary. It'll be secondary. Okay?
Wait. If some
Suppose we have, listen to me,
a
listen to
primary
me,
cannot have an antecedent,
dude,
is
listen
what
to
you
me.
said.
Why? I'm going to ask you, I want a sincere answer, and I don't want you to play the room. Why are you arguing with me on this point when you know and I know that you do not know what you're talking about and I do? Why?
You're
Why are
just
you
making the
arguing with me?
assumption that you do.
Okay, I'm not okay.
You're very
Yeah,
strong
dude,
in your
dude,
stance.
dude,
So,
dude. You listen to me now. What you're doing is you're not being transparent. Okay, you do not know what you are talking about. Okay, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus. You simply don't. You're just accustomed to dialoguing and disagreeing and maybe bickering. Now, you haven't really gotten to the point of bickering, but it's getting close.
Darth, can I
Listen
can I
I
ask you a
mean,
carefully.
question?
No, please, Bart, please wait.
you've been consistently stonewalling me by every time I speak, you say, dude, or you
Because
don't know
you
what
are
you're talking about.
making because you are making numerous philosophical elementary blunders that you're not aware of. Okay? Now, the problem, why am I asking you these questions? Okay? Is because when you open up your mouth and you speak about the world, about how things are, you're talking about what is, what was, what can be and cannot be. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what is it fundamentally that dictates that?
What dictates what will, cannot be,
What
and
what what it listen to me. What dictates fundamentally? What dictates what is, can be, and cannot be?
um, I'd say we haven't been able, as humans, been able to discern the actual origin of what is, can, and cannot be.
Okay. So what you assert is shrouded in complete mystery then.
Um, yeah. If we're talking
Now
about the
here's the
dictate,
problem.
yes.
Here's the problem. If it's shrouded in ultimate mystery, then you can therefore not actually assert what is, can be, or cannot be, because it will have no basis.
Yeah, I agree. We're not
Okay,
asserting.
now,
I've never
now, now,
asserted a
listen,
specific
listen
thing.
to me. If there is nothing dictating at a fundamental level, the most ultimate fundamental level,
Okay.
if there's nothing that is dictating, or I should say, instituting and securing what is, can be, or cannot be for any and all states of affairs, there's nothing identifiable. Then what that means, then, and what I'm about to say is going to be irrefutable. You're not going to accept what I'm about to say, but I'm telling you ahead of time, it is irrefutable. If you cannot tell me what it is that dictates what is, can be, and cannot be, then whatever putative facts you invoke, they will be uninterpretable because there's no rhyme or reason why anything is happening. Now, do you know who Lawrence Krauss is?
No.
He's a famous atheist physicist. Okay. Been on the debate circuit defending atheism. He's on documentaries. Okay. Some people like him, some don't. And he said, we don't need God. We don't need to appeal to supernatural woo woo. We can explain everything through the laws of nature. Now, do you agree with him?
Uh, if I'm just taking that specific sentence, not really.
Okay. So I had got the opportunity to speak with him. And I said, Dr. Krauss, what is it that is fundamental to everything that dictates and secures what is, can be, and cannot be? And he goes, I don't know. And then he got angry and he goes, why does it even matter? Because you told me we don't need to appeal to God as to what is fundamental, dictating what is, can be, and cannot be. But you told me God's not necessary, but you don't know what is ultimately necessary. And do you know when I questioned him on that, he no longer wanted to talk with me. Okay. This is a man who is in TV documentaries talking about physics, space, okay, a universe from nothing. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm questioning you is this: you think that you can do without God. But I've been
Correct.
questioning you about your worldview, and you have no answers as to why anything is.
I have no answers as to the origin of why everything
No,
is.
no, 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 sir. But you see, the issue isn't simply chronology, it's contemporary as well. Right now, at this very moment, what dictates what is, can be, and cannot be?
We still don't know.
Okay, so therefore everything is uninterpretable.
Um, when you say everything, you mean everything that is at the
Every,
moment as well?
everything, everything will be uninterpretable because if you tell me that uh, Y exists because of X, and I say Y X, and you say because of W, and I say Y W, and you say I don't know, then everything it's connected to is I don't know. Okay, so your position results in catastrophic unintelligibility. Now, you're an atheist. Could you tell me why there is no God?
Um, I think it was a creation of man.
Okay. That's called the etymological fallacy. It wouldn't logically and necessarily follow if human reason was faulty and they concluded that there is a God. It wouldn't follow from that because there's faulty human reasoning that God doesn't exist. The only thing that would follow is that they had an incorrect rationale in concluding God. That's
That's
the etymological
yeah.
fallacy. Are we
Um,
clear? Are we clear on
uh,
that?
I think so. I think you're saying what I
Okay.
want to say. Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
Do you understand the etymological fallacy?
Which is what you just explained.
It means that because the manner in which they reasoned to the conclusion, the reasoning was incorrect. Therefore, the conclusion is incorrect. Okay,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
that doesn't follow.
Why wouldn't that exactly follow?
Okay, suppose you and I go to a diner and I add up the check and I say, okay, I'll pay. All right,
Hmm.
and it comes out to $24.
Okay.
Now, suppose because I'm a math Nazi, I want to make sure that she added up the total. She's not padding the bill.
Hmm.
So I start adding up all of the stuff that we ate, and I added a $2 charge, in my mind. Okay, I added one by mistake, but then later on, as I'm going through the items, I accidentally, in adding up, deleted $2. So I added $2, I deleted $2, and then I total it to $24. My reasoning process was fallacious, but the conclusion was still correct. So when you say all gods are made up, it wouldn't matter that every single human beings on this planet's reasonings for God existing didn't add up. It wouldn't follow from that God doesn't exist. And you want to know something? The Encyclopedia Britannica has the atheist entry by atheist philosopher Kai Nielsen, who I think knows a little bit about atheism. Kai Nielsen said in one of his books, all of the reasons for God by humans may fail, but it still might be the case that God exists. So saying God does not exist because people use faulty human reasoning, that's a non sequitur. It's the etymological fallacy. Okay? So do you have any other rationale why there is no God?
Well, that's what I was explaining. So when I
No,
said
no. What you
when you
just
asked me the
explained is a
question,
fallacy.
when you asked me the question, do you believe there's no God? And I said, there's no God because of the human element. Humans are
Oh,
naturally
so you're saying you're not okay, correct me if I'm wrong. You are not asserting there is no God. You're just saying
correct.
you're unconvinced.
So I'm yeah, correct. I'm a yeah. You asked me if I was a skeptic. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good, good, good. So this is typically what we see. What we see atheists doing is when they're confronted about rationally defending their atheism, they furiously backpedal to agnosticism. So is it your position that you're not denying the existence of God, you're just suspending judgment as per the proposition that God does or does not exist? You're suspending judgment on both propositions.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, in the English language, there's a single word. There's only one word in the English language that designates the denial of God. What would that word be?
Um, what atheist? Is
A what?
oh what atheist? The denial of God? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, is there a single word in the English language which is used widespread to indicate those who withhold judgment from God about God's existence on it, that they suspend judgment about God's existence or non-existence? Is there a word in the English language that refers to that?
Yes, wouldn't that be agnostic?
Right. But wait a minute. You're telling me you're an atheist, but the word atheist means the denial of God. But then you told me you're suspending judgment. Okay. But you just told me suspending judgment is an agnostic.
Well, you have to remember, I never said I was an atheist. You said
I,
as an atheist. You posed a
I,
question to me
I
as an
said,
atheist.
okay. So you're denying you're an atheist.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So we're going to deal with that now. Okay. Now, do you know what the law of excluded middle is?
No, I do not.
Okay. It comes from the laws of logic. A equals A, law of identity. A cannot equal not A, the law of non contradiction. And the law of excluded middle, something is either A or not A. We use these all the time in our reasonings every day. Okay. So the law of excluded middle says something is either A or not A. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, if we invoke a fact, uh, like the Statue of Liberty, right? Either the Statue of Liberty exists in the God world or not. Now, that statement is necessarily true. Okay? Either the Statue of Liberty exists in the God world or not. Okay? Do you accept that statement as true?
Either it exists or it doesn't
It's not a
exist.
trick
Okay, sure,
question.
sure.
Okay. So, a particular fact can only exist in one of two realms. Okay? A fact in question will either exist in the God world, and if not, the fact exists in the not God world. There's not a third option, right?
So are you saying that agnostic isn't a third option?
Now, listen to me. Focus on what I'm putting before you, okay? A fact in question, the Statue of Liberty, either exists in a not God world or not, which would mean the God world. Or I could put it in the reverse. Either the Statue of Liberty exists in the God world or not in the not God world. So there's not a third realm. There's not a middle ground. Either the Statue of Liberty exists in a God world or it exists in the not God world, right? Now, if somebody says there's a fact, but it doesn't derive from either realm, they would have no fact at all, would they?
If it has to exist between one or the other, and it doesn't exist in
Right.
either of them, then yeah.
We're not talking about what they know. We're just saying that the fact in question is not designated to derive from either one. Okay? Now, I ask you a simple question. I'm not asking you what you know, I'm asking what you believe. Do you believe that all the facts that you're acquainted with necessitate deriving and depending upon God? The-
No. If it's dependent
okay,
on God, then
so what other realm could your facts exist in?
wouldn't that be the non-God world?
That's right. So guess what? You're claiming to suspend judgment, but you're not, because what you do affirm logically commits you to the non-existence of God.
So then, are you suggesting we're incapable of changing our position?
No, sir. What I'm suggesting to you is you're claiming to suspend judgment about God, but you have decided that the actuality of facts are unworthy of attributing them to God. So you haven't suspended judgment about God. You have made a
Okay, I see what you're
decision.
saying.
You have made a decision that you can do without referencing the necessity of God, haven't you?
На свою голову.
Uh, wait.
Be quiet, Shredder. Have you
Sure.
decided that you can do without referencing the necessity of God?
For the moment, yes.
Okay, that constitutes the denial of God.
I don't personally believe so. Like,
Okay, all right, okay.
strictly
Now,
definition-wise, then yeah.
sir, listen to me. Do you understand that if I say to you, if P, then Q,
Okay.
if you accept that, okay, if P, then Q, Q necessarily follows from P. right? If P, then Q, right? And if I say to you P, and you agree that P is real, then you have also affirmed indirectly Q. You understand? Okay? It's called modus ponens. Do you affirm that facts can be invoked as actual, real, without the necessity of referencing or deriving from God?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So if I say yes, and then that would that would affirm that there is no I believe there is no God, and therefore I would have to be atheist.
Do you believe that facts necessitate deriving or referencing the necessity of God? Do you believe that?
No.
Good. Then you believe that facts can exist without God.
Correct.
That is an indirect denial of the existence of God. You have not suspended judgment. You've decided that facts can be invoked without God.
So then what's the angle that you're going with that I can't
Well,
then
okay,
change?
so facts will either exist with dependency upon God, or facts can exist without God. You have decided that facts can be invoked without God. That's what you believe.
Okay.
You're claiming to suspend judgment, but you haven't suspended judgment. You have decided that God, when you contemplate and consider facts, that facts do not necessitate referencing God as the ultimate precondition. That
That
you
there
can
yes,
do
that there's not enough yet.
so you have decided that you can predicate, you can make statements and utter propositions without invoking God. Okay?
Correct.
Now, if your belief is true, then God cannot logically coexist in that world, and hence God would not exist.
Why
So
would that be
what
the
you
case?
because it logically and necessarily follows. That's why. God can only logically coexist with each and every fact that is not himself, if and only if they derive and depend upon him. In a world where facts do not necessitate deriving and depending upon God, God cannot logically coexist.
I
You have
don't
affirmed, you
necessarily
have,
believe that's the case.
okay, dude, obviously either you're being oppositional or this is going over your head. Now, you believe that facts can be invoked, statements and propositions can be invoked as viable without God, right?
Sure.
Then that what follows from that necessarily, God cannot logically coexist if that belief is true.
Why would that be the case?
Because in a God world, no propositions or statements can do without God,
So
ever.
you're saying every single one has to be
Okay,
uh
because God is defined, okay, I'm not defining God into existence. God is defined as the source and the basis of why any facts at all exist.
mhm.
And so if I say to you that the ballpoint pen I'm holding in my hand, in spite of the fact that it was reformulated from stuff that man dug up, this is a created fact. And a created fact necessarily implies that God exists.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, if it's an uncreated fact, that necessarily implies that God does not exist. I could reword it and say that the molecules that make up this pen necessitate deriving and depending upon God. That, or they necessarily imply God. Okay. Now, that would be me indirectly affirming the existence of God. Now, if I said the opposite, it would be necessitating God does not exist. You believe that facts do not, do not necessitate referencing God. You can make statements about the world without God as the precondition. And if your belief is true, then God cannot exist. Okay? So
Again,
is your
I have to
belief
disagree.
true? Is your belief true that any and all propositions can invoked as real and true without the necessity of referencing God?
So now that you said any and all, then no.
Oh, okay. So then what would follow from that is that God would exist then.
I would have to disagree.
Okay, you're not understanding.
I'm
There's all
understanding where you're
there's
going.
only
There's
listen
only
to me
two. You're
carefully.
saying that
Listen,
there's
no,
two
you're
choices.
not understanding, sir. I'm not trying to browbeat you. You are not understanding. In a God world, do all facts that are not God necessitate deriving from God?
You said in a what, knockout world?
No, I said in a God world, would all facts that are not God necessitate deriving from God?
Yes.
Okay. In a not God world, would all facts not necessitate God?
Uh, sure. And if yeah, you're
Right.
assuming that the not
Now,
God world is confirmed to not have a God, though.
yeah, okay. For somebody who's so opinionated, especially about moral issues, I'm giving you basic metaphysical issues and you're falling all over this. I'm not giving you trick logic here. I'm not giving you mental gymnastics. I'm giving you basic logic, modus ponens, if P, therefore Q. Okay? Now, if a fact depends upon God, then God exists. If a fact does not depend upon God, then God does not exist. If the fact is true in either case, if a fact is true and this true fact depends upon God, then God exists. If a fact is true, but it does not depend upon God ultimately, then God does not exist. Are we clear?
Isn't that just an antecedent
Are we,
fallacy?
listen to me. Are we clear?
Sure, but that's that's
Okay,
an
now,
antecedent fallacy,
now,
though.
now, if I affirm P, then Q follows, right?
Sure. That's a fallacy.
Good. So what's that?
That's a fallacy.
What's a
That's the
fallacy?
that's denying the antecedent fallacy. If P then Q,
Okay,
therefore it's denying
hold on a
God.
second. Hold on a second. If you lie to me right now, if you lie to me, I'm not only going to mute you, I'm going to ban you from this room. Okay?
I'm
Now,
not hurt by that, so you
now,
can do what
now,
you want.
now, who just sent that to you in a DM?
Nothing. I just Googled it.
Okay, all right. Okay, you're a liar. Good, but you're now banned. Okay? He's a liar.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, hold on a second. Let me ban this liar. Okay?
What did he say? It was a fallacy. What fallacy did he say?
Did you ban him yet?
He said it was denying the antecedent. Okay?
Okay.
All I was just simply saying is if a fact depends upon God necessarily, then God exists. If a fact necessarily does not depend upon God, then God does not exist. There's no fallacy there. Okay? If we say that a fact is true, right? And then we say that this fact that is true necessarily derives from God, then God exists. Okay? Because it's not like we're saying if it is raining outside, the street will be wet. Okay? Since the street is wet, okay, therefore it's raining. That would be affirming the consequent. Okay?
Mhm.
That would be bad logic. Okay? So what we're talking about is that the fact in question only has one necessary conclusion, excuse me, not I should say conclusion. The fact in question that we're invoking, any fact at all, either necessarily implies God or necessarily does not. We could say the same thing about water on the street. We could say it either necessarily implies that it was raining or it does not necessarily imply that it's raining. Okay?
I get you. I gotcha.
Darth, quick question. What do you think about those who say that there can be a simultaneous cause and effect?
It's an interesting thought experiment,
hmm
but can they give me an example of such?
When we refer, how about when Christians like refer to the beginning of the universe, God instantiated?
Your voice sounds familiar. What's your previous screen name?
Yeah, it's Valerian. I have talked to you on Clubhouse too.
Okay.
I've used this for a while.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we talk about the beginning of the universe, can't we say it's a simultaneous cause and effect?
I wouldn't because I'm a Christian.
Oh no. So how do we get away from that? Because I'm Christian too. I'm trying to figure out how to get away from that though.
Get away
Because
from what?
so how do we say God from eternity past instantiated the universe?
Why? Because creation doesn't have to be simultaneous with its existence. You might want to affirm that, but it doesn't necessitate that it is.
Okay.
So, for example, Rich Mullins, who is a biblical theologian and a philosopher, says God can just be an example of just something that is enduring, right? God himself can exemplify time, that it's just enduring.
hmm
He continues to exist. Okay.
hmm
Now, this is not something that I've studied enough of in terms of his writings. The guy's
hmm
really he's quite brilliant. Okay, when it comes to the issue of time, but um, look, there's a lot of sophism floating around. Okay,
hmm
not that I myself am perfect in the way that I articulate things. Everybody can make a faux pas, right? But there's a lot of sophism going around, especially among the atheists, because they don't give a shit about whether what they're saying is sound reasoning or not, as long as it sounds good. Just like this guy here today. Okay. And by the way, Kodo, bye bye. I told you I was going to ban you if you lied to me. Okay. He didn't know what the heck. He didn't even understand the basics of what I was even talking about. And then suddenly, out of the blue, he talks about denying the antecedent. I wasn't making an argument. I was saying either A or not A.
I think he
Either
was just being too egotistic or like egoistic to tell you when he doesn't know. You know, like what
he
he
would look,
doesn't know.
look. I'm not trying to be mean. He was a deer in the headlights, and he wasn't even willing to humble himself to say, "Oh well, I haven't really thought about stuff that way, and I just don't understand it."
Exactly.
One minute he denies God's existence, the next minute he says, "Oh, I'm suspending judgment." I'm trying to explain to him that if you affirm that facts can do without the necessity of referencing the necessity of God, you have denied the existence of God implicitly. It's a necessary implication. Okay? If I say facts that are real and true cannot do without the necessity of referencing the necessity of God, then I have necessarily implied the existence of God. You see, the atheist community, with a few exceptions, wants to play verbal, semantical, and mental gymnastics, okay, to stalemate, 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 stalemate. They actually prefer stalemate. That's their version of victory. This is why they lie, they prevaricate, they obfuscate, they split hairs, they play dumb, right? They will regurgitate an initial rationale that has already been debunked, that they have conceded to is debunked, and then they go back to it again.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, don't you think that saying that God caused the causal principle already presupposed that the causal principle preceded the causal principle?
Can you repeat that?
So, when you say that God caused the causal principle, don't you think that's presupposing that the causal principle preceded the causal principle?
I'm not really keen on the way that you're phrasing that. Okay, I presuppose that God institutes the causal principle. The causal principle is that there is a cause and effect relationship for all events.
Does that include the causal principle?
The causal principle, okay, is not an event. It's a global statement that conceptualizes uh, all events. Okay, the chronology of events. But if you want to say, for example, the causal principle is not the same thing as a cause. The causal principle is global in nature. Okay. Now, if you want to say that, let's say God said, "Let there be a black cube," and a black cube appeared, right? Then
Uh,
God was the antecedent to the black cube. God was the cause to the event of a black cube coming into existence. God is the cause. A cause does not have to be an event.
uh,
Okay.
okay. Are you going somewhere with that?
No, I answered you.
So when you say that God, how do you say it? What's the way you phrase it? Arbitrates, or what's the wording?
I don't know what you're referring to.
The causal principle.
The causal principle is that when we conceptualize all of the cause and effect sequences, that for these events, there's a cause, as opposed to the idea that the events are just simply a spontaneous eruption.
Oh, and I'm talking about like the rule that every effect has to have a cause, right? So if God is the one who caused this rule to start existing, then that means that this rule already existed.
I didn't hear the last part of that.
So if I'm referring to the causal principle as in every effect has to have a cause. So
Okay,
if God,
so for example, suppose we have God existing eternally. Okay, he just simply exists. He has duration, right?
yeah,
Other than God being in duration, he just simply exists. God is not caused. Then there's no events that are extraneous to him. He just exists and at his duration. Now, if we're talking about anything that's independent of God, then we would be referring to that there would be an event that it comes to existence, unless, of course, you want to talk about something eternally coexisting with God, but then God wouldn't be God then, because he wouldn't be absolute. He would just simply be an entity that exists from eternity alongside some other entity that exists from eternity. By the way, are you an
but can't you
atheist?
say,
Are
no,
you
I'm
an
Muslim.
atheist?
I'm
Okay.
Muslim. So can't you say that it's just part of his nature?
Is what part of God's nature?
For example, like the causal principle or like the laws of logic.
The laws of logic refer to that every state of affairs or um, entity is what it is in a time index, cannot equal its negation, and it is what it is, or it is not, and this reflects the eternal mind and character of God,
Yeah, so it is part of his nature.
not the God of Islam, only the God of the Bible.
Yeah, whatever you say.
Well, yeah, do you want to defend the existence of the God of Islam?
Not interested right now. I have to go.
Okay, yeah, because the God of Islam is incoherent. Muhammad made numerous philosophical and theological mistakes.
We'll talk about this later.
Good.
You, Darth Dawkins, I just want to thank you again.
Hold on one
you
second.
did-
Hold on 1 second. Okay. That previous guy that I booted for lying to me, he says he Googled it. He was lying. Somebody sent that to him. Okay. And I know that they did. Okay. Now, unfortunately for that guy, I think it was clear to everyone in the room that this guy was a deer in the headlights. He simply did not know much of what he was talking about at all. It was clear to me, and I think clear to everyone else, that I vastly had a more of a comprehension of the subject than he did, even though people may disagree with me. Okay. This guy was just bullshitting the whole time. He was a deer in the headlights. And I kept on telling him over and over again, you just simply don't understand. You don't even know what you're talking about.
Agreed. People are too afraid to say when they don't know. It's I don't know what it is, but I just want
Why
to
don't
thank
you
you.
do? You know what? People have asked me questions before, and I'll say, well, either I don't understand that, or like, well, I don't know how to answer that at the moment. Let me think about it.
He was not one of those people.
No, he wasn't.
Darth, you hold to the B theory, right? Of time?
No.
A theory.
Yes.
Darth, it seems with Muslims it's kind of hard to debate with them because they'll monologue and interrupt you.
But you have to understand, it's because they're like everyone who doesn't believe in the true God of the Bible. They have a resistance to falsification. It's called the suppression of the truth and unrighteousness. In order for a Muslim to come to the conclusion that Allah is not the prophet of God and Allah is not the true God, he's then going to have to simultaneously recognize that all the Muslims alive and all of the Muslims of human history were following some bloodthirsty cult leader of and that Islam is just simply a 7th century cult, which it is. We can easily show blunders, not just putative problems, like people go, oh, the Bible's full of contradictions. Muhammad in the Quran condemned the Christians for taking 3 gods when the Christians said, we only believe in one God. And even if we ignore that, he thought that Allah, Jesus, and Mary was how the Christians conceptualized the Trinity. Allah, of course, representing the Father. Now, Muslims can't have their cake and eat it too. In the 3 verses that I read earlier today from the Quran, it condemns the Christians for taking 3 gods. And each time, those 3 gods are identified as Allah, Jesus, and Mary. Now, if they want to say, well, Mary was included because the Catholics gave devotion and worship to her, which is shirk, and identifying her in a godlike way, okay, fine. But then that would make 4 gods. And by the way, if Muhammad had a correct understanding or Allah had a correct understanding in the doctrine of the Trinity, why is the Holy Spirit conspicuously absent? Why?
Darth, I was in an argument with Muslims the other day where I mentioned in the hadith where it talks about Muhammad marrying Aisha and where they were betrothed when she was betrothed to him at 6 and they consummated their marriage when she was 9. And I was told that I was improperly citing the hadith or I didn't know the language or the linguistics were wrong. And I was muted by the mod in that group. And he went on like a 3-minute monologue about how I'm totally wrong.
Why are you surprised?
They're
Because
being pedantic too.
yeah, they simply can't defend his pedophilia.
I'm not surprised. I'm just saying, like, it's ridiculous. They don't want to argue. They just want to tell you you're wrong, with them.
Well, this is what they do, and this is coming from people who, in their book, says to kill all of the unbelievers, kill them where you find them. Okay, this is a religion that is bent on world domination for the most part. Okay, the only time Muslims are peaceable is when somebody else has a bigger gun. Do you think if Islamic countries had a super weapon that nobody else had, that they wouldn't use it to eventually try to take over the world? Okay.
Question for Darth Dawkins.
Yeah.
What do you identify as, like,
Oh,
Christianity?
I'm a Bible believing Christian. Okay, I believe that the Christian worldview is the only true worldview. It's the only coherent worldview. That Jesus Christ is coming again to judge the living and dead. And if you don't repent, you are going to, when your heart stops, you on Judgment Day are going to be separated from God. And if you deny that, your worldview will be reduced to absurdity because you will be denying it as a worldview. And the only way to deny a worldview is with a worldview. But you see, you cannot establish or account for any other worldview. And the reason why is because any worldview that is coherent, intelligible, and actual will have to have a certain property set at its foundation. And only the God of Christianity possesses that attribute set. Okay? Only the God of the Bible can be categorized as ultimate. And by that, I just don't mean that like it's a label on laundry detergent, like ultimate sheer or ultimate dash or whatever. Okay. Ultimate meaning that he has all great making properties. Okay. All the gods of human history, none of them are ultimate. None of them. Okay. We can objectively demonstrate that Christianity is true, but that doesn't mean we're going to persuade people, because if they're bitter clingers to their autonomy of reason, okay, even though they're believing that their reason is autonomous as opposed that is derivative and dependent upon the autonomous reason of God, they just don't want to they don't want to give it up. So in order to preserve their false belief of autonomy of reason, they just collect for themselves cliches, platitudes, poor logic in order to suppress the truth. I mean, I just want you people to think about this, whether you believe in Christianity or not, right? Assume, for the sake of argument, just temporarily, that the Christian worldview is true. Do we think that the Christian God, being all that he is, would be so foolish as not to provide a testimony of himself in the Christian scriptures that could so easily, logically, rationally, and coherently dismissed by people who reject it? Now, the reason why they do it so regularly is because we haven't had enough Christians to sit there and say, really? You don't believe what God says about himself in the Bible? Yeah, say, good. Then explain to me, how does your world provide for reason? Explain that to me.
That's interesting. Interesting.
Okay, because you see, what we have here is a dialectic, all right? We have in the Christian worldview, what is ultimate is the rational, okay? Right? That what is ultimate is the mind of God. He then creates the world, which coheres and reflects his rational mind, and then he makes human beings whom he makes to be like him. He grants us rationality, okay, at a fundamental nature. So the rational, God, begets the rational. Now, if they want to claim, well, I have a mind and I'm rational and I don't need your stinking God, what they're actually claiming now is the ultimate non-rational, whatever that is, will beget the rational. How does that happen? Because either way, either you have, you're going to claim that irrationality is the result of purely deterministic, the dominoes falling of cause and effect, then how would any sequencing in the future be classified as rational? Because whatever you classify as rational was millions, billions, trillions, or whatever in the making. Okay? So when they claim to be rational without the necessity of God, they're making a very bold claim. And as I recall, the late, great Christopher Hitchens, who's now is a theist and he knows there's a God and he's awaiting judgment day, he used to always say, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Now, if we say that we're rational in virtue of God, and they say, well, invoking God to explain creation and our rationality is an extraordinary claim, well, so is the not God world an extraordinary claim. Okay, if I say God is the creator of all things, and therefore everything is universally derived and depends upon God, and that's a universal, well, then he's saying that making a universal declaration is an extraordinary claim that requires extraordinary evidence. But when he makes the universal claim of not God, that too is an extraordinary claim. What's the extraordinary evidence for the not God world? Anyone? Bueller?
Nothing.
What is it? Okay, so what they want to do is they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to demand that when the Christian makes the universal that God is the creator and that he's revealed himself and all facts derive and depend upon him, they say, prove it. Say, good. So I take it then that since you want me to prove the God world, you're already operating out of the not God world, right? You're not an innocent bystander. You're not suspending judgment. You're in the not God world. What proved that?
So your only defense is to question back the same question?
No. My case for the existence of God is a positive one. Okay? But I'm just juxtaposing the positive case for God that the not God world position is indefensible. I'm not saying that God exists because the atheists fail at defending their not God world. That would be an appeal to ignorance. I'm not saying that because I'm unconvinced by their rationale of the not God world, therefore God. That's not my reasoning. I'm saying that I believe in God by the only grounds by which I could believe in God, that God has taken the initiative to reveal himself through creation and through human history, preserved infallibly his dealings with human beings in the Bible. Makes no difference to me that somebody else rejects it. If you want to debate that, we can debate that. But I'm actually making a positive, objective case for the Christian God, that the Christian God has revealed through creation and through Scripture that he has all of the attributes, fundamental attributes, which will be necessary fundamentally in a world in order for there to be human intelligibility. Now, if you don't accept that, you're making an implicit counterclaim that intelligibility in your world can be invoked and established without God. Good luck. Do you think you can do that?
No.
Yeah. This is why the atheist position is so asinine. This is why these atheists play all of these verbal and mental gymnastics. Okay? This is why the vast majority of atheists go, well, atheism is not the denial of God. Atheism is the lack of belief in God. Really? So what do you call somebody who denies the existence of God? What do you call them? Right? And by the way, every atheist who denies the existence of God, guess what? They lack belief in God. So how is it informative for atheists to tell me that they lack belief in God, but it's not the denial of God? Telling me that atheism is a lack of belief in God is nonspecific. It's ambiguous. They're simply doing this to insulate themselves from having to defend what they really believe, that God does not exist. And then when you say to them, can you please explain to me why there is no God? You're shifting the burden of proof. No, I'm not. If I affirm God or one denies God, we both have to make a positive case. But the atheists know that they can't make a positive case. That's why they just spew their cliches. Like they'll go, there's no evidence for God. Say, good. Can you unpack that?
Well, how can you unpack no evidence?
Oh, okay. So let's look at this. If you and I are homicide detectives, as an analogy, and we walk into the kitchen of the house and there's a dead body on the floor with a bullet hole in its head, and there's a handgun on the floor. And I turn to you and I say, this gun is not evidence of the homicide. What are you going to say to me?
Well, I'd call you fucking stupid.
Why?
Because there's the gun there. Well, I mean, first of all, there's more steps to it than we could take. We could check the bullet. We could check
No. Why,
the
wait, hold on a second.
gunpowder.
Okay, why do you instantaneously reject my statement?
That it isn't part of the crime.
If I said to you that is not evidence of the homicide, why do you reject what I just said?
Because it's part of the scene. It literally is part of the evidence of
No,
the crime.
no.
It's literally on the scene.
No.
Well, but that's literally that is the reason.
No, sir. When we talk about evidence vis-a-vis two things, we're talking about causal relations and connections, okay? We're not talking about evidence as it is used in a courtroom, Exhibit A, Exhibit B. Do you understand? That we're not using it in that sense. That, like for example, suppose in the homicide investigation, the homicide detective grabs the roll of paper towels, and it's included in the exhibit. Okay, it's Exhibit K, but there's no forensic information on it whatsoever. But it's just included. Okay, in a legal sense, it's cataloged as evidence. Okay. Right?
Yeah.
So we're not talking about cataloging something as evidence in a jurisprudence sense. When we talk about evidence for something, we're talking about that there's causal relations between one state and another. Okay?
Sure.
Okay. So let's get back to the gun. I say to you, that is not evidence of the crime. So what are you going to say now to me?
Okay, then that's a possibility in your investigation. You can investigate
No,
that if you'd like.
Are you going to accept or reject what I'm saying?
I'm saying we can investigate that. So I guess
Okay,
I'm accepting it. Yeah, I'm
okay,
accepting
it. So okay, good.
As a possibility.
Well, right. So now, if I said it's not evidence for the crime, I will either be saying that there's no causal connections between the gun and the homicide, or what I'm saying is the gun is indeterminate.
Sure.
Okay. So when an atheist says there's no evidence for God, are they stipulating that there's no causal, ontological, metaphysical connections between the facts of this world and God, or are they saying that the facts of this world are indeterminate?
That there's no causal.
And how did they determine that?
Well, because in order to believe it, you'd need the belief, and if you don't believe in it, then you're not
if you're going
there.
to say, look, if I said to you the handgun is not evidence of the homicide, you say, how so? Well, I'll say to you, there's no causal relations between the gun and the murder, because I said that is a pellet gun. I'm looking at it right now. I'm reading the manufacturer's label. It's an air pistol.
Okay.
Okay. So it couldn't be evidence of the homicide because it's physically incapable of inflicting those wounds.
Sure.
Okay. So now I have supported my claim that there's not a causal connections between the gun and the dead body. Now, if somebody says that all the facts that they're acquainted with do not stand in ontological causal connections with God, they're going to have to explain how did they determine that.
I think the disconnect happens that you're positing.
Are you an atheist? Are you an atheist?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Do you posit that there's no evidence for God?
I just don't believe it.
Okay, sir, listen carefully. Do you affirm or assert that there is no evidence for God?
I just don't believe it.
Okay,
that's all.
I'll ask you one more time, okay? Okay, I asked the question a second time because your answer was unacceptable. Okay? Do you believe all the facts in the world stand in causal relations to God? You either believe it or you don't.
I think my answer says that yes, there are the facts there. I do not believe the facts, so no.
Okay, so how did you determine that all the facts in the world do not stand in causal relations to God?
Because there's no clear connection apart from this.
Oh, okay. So now you're changing your
wait.
No, you wait.
This
This is my room. This is my
You're
room,
trolling.
and I'm accustomed to people. No, I'm not a troll. But you see, I'm accustomed to people meandering down rabbit trails here. Now, so are you saying that the facts of the world are indeterminate?
The facts that are in your books and in your scriptures
No, I didn't
about the
mention. I
world
didn't
are
mention
indeterminate.
anything. See,
No, but
notice
those are the facts
everybody. Okay,
those are
listen
the
to
facts you
me.
operate
We're not
with.
going to have cross talking here. Okay, what you
That's what you just did to
what
me,
you
though.
did. That's right. Because you know why? Is
Because it's
because
your room.
you. Okay, no, I said it's my room, but I'm making a point of moderation because you're trying to scurry down a semi-related rabbit trail. Okay, which is what atheists do. I've seen it for 10 years. Okay, now. If you say all the facts, first of all, you start talking about my belief system.
Yeah.
My belief system at this particular moment has no bearing on you defending your propositional claim that there's no evidence for God.
Well, we're talking about God, which is your
Okay,
beliefs, is that not
sir,
it?
listen to me. Listen to me. I'm going to ask you a question. I ask this all the time. I don't care if atheists and unbelievers have hemorrhoidal attacks. How old are you?
I'm 20.
Okay, then you better up your game, 20-year-old young man, because you are bickering with me like you're a 15-year-old.
I'm
I
not
don't
bickering
mind
with
you.
you.
Listen to me.
You're the one who's getting mad.
Okay, you know what?
You're the
Okay,
one who's
good.
getting mad.
You want to bicker with me? Good. Now you're gone. Goodbye. Don't come back in, or I'm going to ban you. Okay.
Bro.
So here we have a 20-year-old. Here we have a 20-year-old. He's not debating like an adult. Okay, I'm going to tell you one more time. If you come back in here in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to ban you. Okay?
You're a boomer.
Okay. Now, and why is that a problem?
I don't know. You're banning him because he's younger than you? Like, what's your problem?
Boy, are you dumb. Okay? Now, he is getting booted, okay, because he is not discussing and debating like an adult. He's going into.
No, you asked his age and he answered you.
Okay,
Then
all right,
then you
all right,
decided-
little boy, go find your retainer and your jammies. Okay, right?
Dawkins.
When people get cornered on these issues, they reach into their little American atheist canvas tote bag and pull out one of the 100 stratagems of misdirection. And in this case, he was pulling out bickering. Okay? He wants to maintain there's no evidence for God, but that he wasn't saying that it was indeterminate, that he's just saying, I'm in a state of ignorance. Not me, himself. But then when I asked him to defend it, then he's falling back on that it's indeterminate. This is what they do. And then when I said, no, if you say that there's no evidence for God, you're going to have to defend that. If I say everything is evidence for God, I have to defend that too. But we were talking about atheism. And immediately he starts talking about my belief, okay, which is the classic bait and switch where the atheists go, oh, you're shifting the burden of proof. Atheism is just a rejection of a claim. No, it isn't. Atheism is a positive position that there are no gods. Okay? Now, if I say to the atheists, your atheism is just simply not rational, okay? I haven't made my case for God, okay? I have to do more than that, okay? I have to make a case for God's existence, right? They just want to make it so that they want to stand tall. They want to ride high in that saddle like the Marlboro Man, right? I'm an atheist, right? You say, good, let's talk about it. Let's have you defend it. And then once we start asking questions and they realize that the spotlight of truth is on them, then all of a sudden they start folding like a cheap lawn chair at a garage sale, right? And then they start to bicker. If you're going to say there's no evidence, I want you to explain to me, how did you determine that all the facts you're acquainted with do not stand in causal relations with God? Because if you don't, then your claim is just simply saying the facts are indeterminate. I'm just in a state of ignorance. Okay? So you're not really making a statement about the nature of the facts and what they implicate. What you're really saying is, I'm in a state of ignorance. I don't know what the facts mean.
I noticed that a lot of atheists won't just go out and say there is no God in their own belief. They won't just say it.
Well,
They'll
some of
dance
them
around
will, but they're drive-by cockroaches. They'll go, there is no God, and then they leave, right? And then they'll say, well, there is no God, and you say, well, how did you come to that conclusion? And then they'll say, prove it. They want to assert there's no God, and then when you ask them to unpack and support this declaration, then what they do is they morph like a transformer, like a male homosexual, transitioning into a transvestite. They start going, oh, well, I just lack belief.
Seems like they really won't stand by it.
No, this is why they'll start off in an adult manner, but at a certain point, when they realize that their interlocutor knows the subject matter vastly better than they do, they go into bickering mode. Okay? Because that way, they stalemate the conversation. Okay? This is what a clown show atheists are. And by the way, this isn't just for the interweb atheists. There are professional atheists who do this as well. Okay? You want to know what's at the heart of atheism? I'm going to play a clip for you. Okay? It's short. Okay? This is the late, great Christopher Hitchens, who hated God. Okay? And he denied that God existed. Now, I'm going to play a short interview. What you're going to see here he doesn't disbelieve in God because, God is just indefensible. He hates God because God is God. Listen to this.
Technical difficulties, or
What's that?
I can't hear it. Are you playing it? Or?
Oh, okay. I thought you could hear it. Let me look at my software.
Yeah, I don't think anybody here could hear it.
All right, let me check my software. Ah, you're right. Hold on. Okay, my audio software routing is not working at the moment. Let me try quitting. Give me a second. Why isn't it working? This is strange. Why isn't it working? Give me a minute. something's going wrong here. All right, why isn't this working? Let's see. Let me see if I can quickly troubleshoot. I might have to restart my system. Here, I'll play it through my speaker. Okay, tell me if you can hear it in the next 5 seconds.
So what if God actually exists, sir?
Can you hear that?
Yes.
And what if he actually has provided everything for you? He's granted you life, he has given you health, he has given you food, he's given you the trees to write your screed against him, he's provided you royalties, it all came from him. What if that is true, sir? Would he not have been good to you?
Now, what do you think his answer is? What if God actually does exist and he made you and you're on this planet and you're living and you're breathing, blah, blah, blah? Wouldn't he have good to you? What do you think his answer is going to be? Anybody think he's going to say yes? Okay. This is a guy who's consumed with hatred toward God. Listen to this answer.
No, he wouldn't. Because if that were true, it would mean that I had an eternal supervising parent who would never die and let me get on with my life, never let me.
In other words, Christopher Hitchens would not be in a good state because God doesn't cease to exist. Okay? He said, it would be like an eternal parent who would never die. And then he says, and never let me get on with my life. Well, wait a minute. The question was, if God exists, right? Hasn't Christopher Hitchens been getting on with his life? Right? Hasn't he led a life as he sees fit? Right? Has God intervened in Christopher Hitchens' life that Christopher Hitchens couldn't choose the way he wanted to live? So right then there, Christopher Hitchens is lying. He's a lying sack of crap. But guess what? It gets better.
Keep me under surveillance.
But you have, sir.
Supervision every minute of my life.
He says, it wouldn't be good because God would be keeping me under surveillance. Now, notice how he's caricaturizing God, who would be by definition omniscient, as though God was a peeping Tom or some clandestine spy from the government. I mean, it doesn't get even more stupid than this. I mean, not even dumb teenagers talk this way. But then again, Christopher Hitchens was an alcoholic.
Somebody else, and constantly else needs to be thanking and praising him.
Yeah,
I think it would
that
be
wasn't part of the scenario.
living in North Korea.
So if God asks us to thank him on a daily basis for our food, right? Our Father who art in heaven, okay? That would be like living in North Korea. Give us our daily bread. Wow. Whoever thought thanking God for our food was like living in North Korea? What a psycho this guy is.
I think it'd be a horrible outcome.
Well, I'm not sure that God is Kim Jong-il, but what if what I said is true?
Well, on Kim Jong-il, he has a different opinion.
So if that is the God who's made you and created you, he's allowed you to live your life, shouldn't that be a sign of kindness to you?
Propaganda much?
No, I don't want anyone's permission.
What's that, sir?
Propaganda much?
On whose part? Hitchens or me?
Yes, on Hitchens.
Yeah, I mean, it's beyond bullshit. I mean, it's just borderline psychotic. Okay?
Thanks.
All righty. Well, it's not that you've been asked. So you asked him.
I think it's servile, and one is expected to constantly grovel as a result.
Well, guess what? Does the God of the Bible ask us to be servile and grovel? Or does God just simply expect us to be grateful and thankful and praise him for all the goodness that he is? Right? I mean, this guy is psycho, right? It's servile to thank God, right? I'll bet you anything. Christopher Hitchens had children. I'll bet you anything he taught his children that when people do things for you, you say thank you, right? But he doesn't want to thank God. I mean, what a deranged person.
Hey, Christopher Hitchens, round 2 of What If. What if God exists? He's provided everything for you. He's kept you together by the power of his word. If that is truly God, do you believe that God, if he's provided everything for you, has rights on your life?
No.
No. If God is creator, he has no claim on my life. No. He has no right on me as creator.
Because?
Why should he? What gives him this right?
Because.
What gives him that right? Well, the last time I checked, Christopher Hitchens, rights have a statutory basis with an enforcement mechanism. And given that God would be the creator and the lawgiver, that would qualify as giving him the right. I mean, this is what you get from an alcoholic who hates God.
He owns you. He's created everything for you. He's kept you alive.
I don't want to be owned. I don't recognize anyone's
I don't want to be owned. I don't want to be owned, and I don't recognize anyone's right to own me, even the creator.
Sounds like he had an overprotective mother or father when he was growing up or something.
No, I wouldn't blame his childhood. I would blame the fact that he was a drunk and he hated God. Right?
Did he have marriage issues?
I don't know. That's somebody making a temper tantrum. That's inside the mind of an atheist. But you see, most atheists won't be transparent like that. Okay?
That's just hilarious.
This is why we have such few adult-minded and intelligent interactions with atheists. The majority of them are infantile, they're worse than ADD teenagers, and they're purposely irrational and engage in bickering. You know, I talked with an atheist who had a PhD in philosophy who actually debated William Lane Craig. His name was, what was his name? Stephen Law. The doctor, Professor Stephen Law. And I was invited to the AMA and I asked him a question. And I stuck to the question. I wasn't fooled by his evasive response. And rather than answer the question transparently, he tried to turn the tables and impugn me. Right? You got an open mic, Skype. Okay? And this is a famous atheist and a professor of philosophy. Rather than answer a good, clear, circumspect question of why there's no God, because he was uncomfortable answering that question, he tried to impugn me and my motives. Okay? And this is a academic. So we're still looking for some atheists or unbelievers who have the intestinal fortitude to tell us what they believe. Right? Any atheists?
Not
No,
here.
I didn't think so. I didn't think so. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not hiding out, in my own room. I try to go into other rooms, and when I do, when I try to dialogue with other atheists, debate with them, the cockroach hecklers come out of the woodwork, like the Jacobins did during the French Revolution, cutting people's heads off if you disagree with them. I've tried to call into atheist YouTube shows, and even the ones that let you on, they immediately put you in a verbal straitjacket, and unless you respond to their multitudinous rabbit trails, you can't have a good conversation. Why are they acting this way? Why? Oh, I think we all know why. It's because their rationale for atheism is garbage. So when they say, well, there's no evidence for God, say, good. Can you please explain to me, how did you make the determination that all the facts you're acquainted with don't ultimately derive from God? And go, well, I don't have a reason to believe in that. That doesn't follow that because you're in a state of ignorance, that therefore facts don't derive and depend upon God. And then they'll say, well, atheism is not a positive claim. Atheism is just a lack of belief. No, it's not. It's a positive claim. Ugh. Where do they grow these people? Okay, I'll be back in a few minutes. Maybe we can get some adult-minded atheists in here.
Proton, how are you? Actually, less than Proton. Maybe you're busy.